Imagine this. You're a Roman soldier. Not afraid of the enemy. Not afraid of death. But terrified of your own army. Because one mistake, one wrong move, and your own commanders could torture you, execute you, or make your fellow soldiers kill you. This wasn't rare. It was Roman discipline. And it was brutal. The army that punished its own. The Roman army wasn't just powerful. It was ruthless from the inside. Discipline wasn't optional. It was enforced through fear. If a soldier disobeyed orders, ran from battle, or even showed cowardice, the punishment wasn't just death. It was something far worse. Something designed to send a message to every man in the legion. A punishment called decimation. Here's how it worked. If a unit failed in battle, the commanders wouldn't punish just one man. Instead, they would gather the entire group, then divide them into groups of 10, and force them to draw lots. Whoever picked the unlucky mark would be beaten to death. Not by enemies, but by his own brothers in arms. Imagine standing there, knowing that your friends, the men you fought beside, might be forced to kill you. Or worse, you might be forced to kill them. This wasn't just punishment. It was psychological terror. It ensured one thing. No Roman soldier would ever dare to run again. Because the enemy might kill you once. But your own army? They would make your death slow, painful, and unforgettable. Fear within the ranks. Decimation was just the beginning. The Roman army had other ways to make its soldiers fear their own brothers. For minor offenses, a soldier could be stripped naked in front of the unit and whipped until bruised beyond recognition. Forced to carry out grueling physical punishments for hours, sometimes days. Shunned, humiliated, or branded with marks that identified them as cowards for life. And it didn't stop there. Commanders sometimes executed soldiers in front of the whole legion as a warning. One famous case, after a failed attack in Gaul, hundreds of soldiers were lined up. Their commander walked slowly down the line, pointing randomly. And men were dragged away and executed while the rest watched. No one knew who would be next. The fear wasn't just for survival. It was mental torture. Soldiers slept with one eye open, ate in silence, and obeyed orders without question. Even minor hesitation could mean death, not from the enemy, but from the very army you trusted. This is why Roman soldiers, despite being the most disciplined warriors in history, were often terrified, not of their enemies, but of their own ranks. Because in Rome, loyalty could save your life. But a single mistake could make your own brothers the executioners. Horrors on the battlefield. The fear didn't end when the battle began. Roman soldiers weren't just afraid of their enemies. They were terrified of their own army's discipline. Imagine this. A legion is charging into battle. Chaos everywhere. Arrows flying. Men screaming. A soldier falters. Hesitates. The enemy hasn't even noticed yet. But his centurion does. Immediately, he is dragged out of formation. Sometimes beaten in front of the entire legion. Sometimes executed on the spot. And the rest? They watched. It wasn't just punishment, it was a warning carved into the minds of every soldier. There are stories of entire units being forced to march without food or water for days, punished for failing to keep perfect formation. Soldiers fainted from exhaustion, only to be mocked or beaten when they fell. Some were even forced to carry their comrades' dead bodies back to camp. A grim reminder that cowardice would not be forgiven. This relentless fear created soldiers who were obedient, efficient, and terrified of their own brothers in arms. Because in the Roman army, survival didn't depend on strength alone. It depended on walking the fine line between courage and the wrath of your own legion. The psychological scars lasted longer than any battlefield wound. Even the bravest warriors knew. Your greatest enemy could be standing right next to you, shield in hand. The ultimate punishment. Decimation was terrifying. But the Romans didn't stop there. There were soldiers who survived battle unscathed, yet were executed for minor failures. A single soldier stepping out of line could face being forced to fight wild animals in training arenas, being left to die in the desert with only minimal rations, or being torn apart by comrades in front of the entire legion. One legendary case comes from the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. After the catastrophic defeat by Hannibal, Rome didn't just mourn. They punished their soldiers harshly. Units who fled were gathered. Every 10th man was executed by the hands of his own brothers. The rest were forced to stand over the bodies, reminded of what cowardice meant. This wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was psychological warfare within the army itself. Fear was a weapon. Fear kept the legion together. Fear ensured obedience. Fear created legends. Because a Roman soldier knew something terrifying. You could survive the enemy's arrows, swords, and fire. But there was no escaping the wrath of your own army. And that fear, that constant, grinding terror, made the Roman army the most disciplined and unstoppable force in history. But at what cost? Mental scars, broken soldiers, lives ruined by loyalty, and the haunting knowledge that your own brothers could be the ones to end your life at any moment. Fear that built an empire. The Roman army was more than soldiers. It was a machine built on fear. Fear of the enemy. Fear of failure. But above all, fear of your own brothers. Every legionnaire carried that terror into battle. Every march, every skirmish, every campaign. It was etched into their minds. And yet, somehow, this fear created unmatched discipline, courage, and loyalty. The same men who trembled at the thought of punishment could charge headfirst into the deadliest battles. They could hold a line against impossible odds. They could endure hunger, exhaustion, and pain. Because the fear of their own army was worse than death itself. It's a dark truth. The Roman Empire didn't just conquer lands. It conquered the minds of its soldiers first. And that's why, even today, we still marvel at their power and shudder at the horrors they endured from the very army that protected them. So the next time you think about the Roman legions, remember this: their greatest weapon wasn't their swords. It was the terror they held for one another. The legacy of fear. Even after centuries, the stories of Roman soldiers haunt history. The empire they built, the victories they won, were all fueled by fear that ran deeper than the battlefield. Soldiers who survived decades in the legions often returned home. Not as heroes, but as broken men. Men who had seen comrades beaten, executed, or forced to kill one another. All for the sake of obedience. Decimation, public beatings, forced executions. These were not just punishments. They were tools to forge absolute loyalty. Roman commanders understood something terrifying. Fear binds soldiers together more tightly than camaraderie. Fear ensures discipline beyond reason. Fear turns ordinary men into machines of war. And yet, there was a cost. Families sometimes didn't recognize the men who returned. Minds were haunted by the screams of their own brothers. By the knowledge that a single mistake could have meant death. By the crushing weight of living under an army that punished its own as brutally as it punished enemies. But this dark system created the greatest military force the ancient world had ever seen. The Roman legions weren't just feared by their enemies. They were feared by everyone who ever stood within their ranks. And here's the chilling truth. If you think courage is measured by facing the enemy, the Romans proved that true courage is enduring the terror of your own people. So when you read the stories of Roman conquests, of empires falling and rising, remember this hidden secret. The greatest weapon of Rome wasn't its gladius. It wasn't its shields or formations. It was fear itself. Fear that turned soldiers into monsters. Fear that kept them alive. And fear that ensured Rome would dominate the world for centuries. Because in the end, the most terrifying battle a Roman soldier ever fought wasn't against Hannibal, the Gauls, or the Parthians. It was against the army that raised him, disciplined him, and could destroy him in a heartbeat. And that fear made Rome unstoppable.